think it's past, is it? It is. It says 6:26 on this device in front of me, but give it a minute. It says 6:30 on that one. That's better. Right. Good evening, everyone. The first item of business is actually appointment of chair for this evening's meeting. So I'll ask anybody to nominate a chair of this meeting. Councillor J.
Can I propose Councillor Alistair Bradley, please?
Anybody like to second that? Thank you for that. Don't leave me hanging. That's very good of you. All those in favour, please show of me being the chair. Thank you. That's easier because then we don't have to move everybody around the room so we can see everybody. Welcome to this meeting. The meeting of the Central Lancashire Strategic Joint Advisory Committee. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Alistair Bradley and I will be chairing this meeting as of 2 minutes ago. Obviously, members are reminded and the public are reminding that this is streamed in two parts. There's a public part of the meeting, and then we will move to a part 2 meeting where confidential matters are discussed. And this part is being recorded and streamed live on YouTube. If you are joining on Teams, and we have quite a few people in attendance on Teams, by all means raise your hand. I'll try and spot you on the screens in front of us. Or if you aren't spotted, speak up before we move on to any other business. We're not expecting any fire alarms or anything, so if you do hear a fire alarm, the exit is right outside the door here, and on the right, straight out into the back, next to the police station behind the building here. I was going to do introductions, and we'll do it very quickly if we can for those members on the front row. And I'll start with Councillor Alan Cullens over the far side, if that's okay. Put your device on, please, Alan.
Right. Councillor Alan Cullens, representing Lancashire County Council.
Councillor Caleb Tomlinson, South Ribble Borough Council.
Councillor James Flannery, South Ribble Borough Council.
Councillor Javed Iqbal, covering for David Barrow. Thank you.
Councillor Alistair Wood, Chorley Borough Council.
So we've got Councillor Alex Hilton in attendance from Chorley Council in the room. I'm trying to see who's online, who's councillors. Speak up if any councillors on the online. I can see Phil Smith. Go on, Phil. He's not listening to me.
Yes, I'm here and listening, Alistair, thank you.
Are there any other councillors online you can see?
Sue Whittam's there somewhere, I know, but there's actually not got the screen on, but...
oh, she's here now. Carry on, Sue.
But you're there.
I've lost my voice, Alistair.
That's terrible,
so
Sue.
that's why
We're
I'm
devastated
there.
in the room. We're devastated.
I'm sure you are. So that's why I'm not there.
You can put notes in the chat, Sue, and we will read them out for you, if that's okay. Okay.
Yeah, I haven't lost mine.
Councillor Michael Green. Michael's online. Can you hear us, Michael? Just make a sound, Michael, if you can hear us.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay. Any other councillors?
Evening.
Ben? Thank you, Michael. Any other councillors on?
That's all the councils. We've obviously got some guests who are making presentations.
Right, we've got a lot of guests. We've got a lot of officers. Too many to mention now, as we're here all night. Jay?
Yeah, Councillor Catherine is outside the building, can't get in.
Is she?
Yes.
Right.
I'll leave
Ben
that to
will
you.
go and rescue her now from the dark, mean streets of Chorley on a cold, frosty night. It depends which door she goes to, as you well know, Councillor Flannery. Isn't that right? Depends which door you go to. It's like it's a lottery.
It's like the Krypton Factor, this place.
This is the second town hall you've been locked out of tonight, isn't it? Because you were locked out of Blackburn at 5 o'clock and Chorley at 6 o'clock. Well done.
What a great day.
Right, okay. Just to note that obviously, as Councillor Javed Iqbal mentioned, Councillor David Barrow has stepped down from this committee, and I'd like to thank him for all the time he spent on this committee with us. And he will be missed because he's a wise old bird at times, and he's been around this a long time, and his views were always appreciated. So you've got a big act to fill there tonight. Yeah, some wise words. We've got one apology for absence I'm aware of, Councillor Elaine Stringfellow at South Ribble, who is substituted by the aforementioned Councillor Kath Unsworth, who is hopefully being escorted to the building as we speak. I'm not aware of any other apologies. Has anybody else got any other apologies? No, in that case, we will move on. Has anybody got any declarations of interest at all? Any of the items? No. The next item then is the minutes of the meeting held on the 3rd of October. Has anybody got any comments on those minutes? Anything they'd like to raise at all? Who was at that meeting? No. In that case, can somebody propose those minutes?
I propose them, Alistair.
Proposed by Councillor Flannery, seconded by Councillor Morwood. I'll just make a note of that because Ben's not here, but he's already on the record. He can watch it back on YouTube. The next item of business then is our first report, which is to do with the strategic flood risk assessments. And we have a presentation from JBA. I believe Mike Williamson and Laura Thompson are present on the call. Are you there, Mike, Laura?
Hello. Yeah.
Good. Excellent. I've got you.
Yeah,
We can see you. We can hear you. That's a good start.
Great.
By all means, fire away. Welcome to Councillor Kath Unsworth. Sit here at the front, Kath, next to Alison Morwood, if you would. Glad you got in the building eventually. Mike, Laura, take it away, please.
Yeah. So we're just going to do a quick 10-minute presentation, and then have 5-10 minutes for some questions after that. That's okay.
Yep.
So just to kick off with, I'm Mike Williamson. I'm a principal analyst at JBA Consulting, and I'm project managing the strategic flood risk assessment. And just to note that we previously did the previous incarnation as well a couple of years ago. So Laura's just going to run through a quick presentation, kind of summarising what strategic flood risk assessments are for those that might not be aware, and just a bit of background for you, and then we'll open the first questions. Cheers.
Carry on.
Thanks, Mike. I'll share my screen. Hopefully it comes through okay. Is that okay?
It is. Ben, would you just put it on the
Fab.
screen, please, mate?
Yep, I can see that, Laura.
Okay, great. So yeah, as Mike said, I'm Laura Thompson. I'm an analyst at JBA Consulting. I'm leading on a lot of the technical aspects of this project, with Mike project managing. So just a bit of context and background. As Mike mentioned, we previously produced the SFRA, level 1 SFRA for Central Lancs in February 2021. So since then, there's been a lot of updates on government and environment agency guidance, which has led to some changes in the way that SFRAs are produced. So there's a need to update the SFRA for Central Lancashire to bring it in line with the most up-to-date guidance. So just noted on the screen there are some of the key guidance documents that have been updated. So just a bit of context of where SFRAs fit into the wider local plan. SFRAs are needed to provide a strategic review of flood risk across the local plan area, and provide a high-level assessment of flood risk to potential development sites. So it's stated in Section 3 of the MPPF, which is the framework used for all planning policy. It's not just flood risk. But that states that each local planning authority should prepare a local plan for its authority area. So this can be done by individual local planning authorities, or a combined group of local authorities, as is the case for the Central Lancashire authorities. The local plan guides decisions on future development proposals, and addresses the needs and opportunities of the area, and cover areas including housing, employment and retail, and identify where development should take place. So this just shows the process that a local plan goes through, and where the strategic flood risk assessment fits into all of that. So the first step of the local plan is the evidence gathering, where evidence is collected on all of the different aspects of the local plan, not just flood risk. So this can incorporate housing needs, rail and road infrastructure, economic and education needs. Environmental evidence is also considered at this stage, which can include biodiversity, air quality, provision of green space, flooding, and it's at this stage in which the SFRA is produced. Although there's a wide range of aspects that need to be considered, flood risk is particularly important as it can directly feed into selection of sites for development. Once this evidence has been gathered and a draft plan has been put together, it goes out to a first consultation of the plan, which allows for members of the public to comment on the plan and identified housing locations and proposals, which is known as the Regulation 18. Responses are then considered and a sustainability appraisal is developed, which looks into whether the plan is sustainable, not only from an environmental perspective, but also economically and in terms of housing provision. And then goes through another public consultation stage, which is the Regulation 19. So following that, local plan is submitted for independent examination. So this is the point in which the examination in public takes place, which is a series of meetings in which the main matters discussed, which assesses the soundness of the plan. This doesn't just look at flood risk, however, looks at all aspects of the local plan. And if the inspector is happy with the local plan, they'll recommend adoption of the plan, and that comes into effect. So this slide just highlights the tests that we perform as part of the strategic flood risk assessment. So the sequential test ensures that a sequential risk-based approach is followed to steer new development to the areas with the lowest risk of flooding. This needs to take into account all sources of flooding and also include the impact of climate change on that. The exception test is slightly different in that it needs to be demonstrated that the exception test has been met. So there are two components to that. There's first a sustainability component, so development that needs to be in a flood risk area will provide wider sustainability benefits that outweigh the risk of flooding. So this is thinking about what is the need for that development to be in that location that is at risk of flooding, and does it provide wider needs that outweigh the negative impacts of flooding. The second component to that is that will development be safe for its lifetime, taking into account the vulnerability of its users without increasing flood risk elsewhere. So lifetime of a residential development is 100 years and 75 years for commercial development. So safety for its lifetime just means that it won't put users of the development at risk of flooding in the future. The exception test is usually performed at the more detailed site-specific level 2 SFRA stage. So this slide just summarises what the level 1 SFRA should cover. It should consist of maps showing all sources of flood risk and flood risk management data sets with a supporting report that just summarises flood risk within the area. A level 1 SFRA should assess the risk from all sources of flooding. So this includes surface water, fluvial, tidal, reservoir, sewer flooding, and groundwater. There's more. But yeah, it also needs to consider the cumulative impact that development or changing land use has on the risk of flooding, and it needs to consider the effect of climate change on flood risk. The level 1 document itself should help users carry out the sequential test for the local plan and individual planning applications. It should do the exception test on the local plan where it's needed or support with that process. It should establish if development could be made safe without increasing flood risk elsewhere. And it should identify if proposed development is within the functional floodplain. So this is a requirement of the local planning authority to identify the functional floodplain rather than the Environment Agency, who produce the flood map for planning. The functional floodplain should be based on a modelled flood event with a probability of occurring of 1 in 30 years. And lastly, the level 1 SFRA should identify and safeguard land from development that may be needed for future flood risk management uses. So following on from the level 1 SFRA, a level 2 SFRA is likely to be required. So this is needed where land proposed for development cannot be allocated outside flood risk areas. It may also be required where there's an expectation that there'll be applications submitted for sites that are within flood risk areas. So these are your windfall sites. The level 2 SFRA needs to assess the residual flood risk rather than the undefended, which is considered at the level 1 SFRA stage, and the nature of this flood risk. So depths, velocities, rather than just the extent of flooding. Residual risk refers to the defended flood risk rather than undefended. So in particular, this includes breaches of those defences and how that may impact proposed development. The level 2 SFRA should help with applying the sequential test by identifying the severity and variation in risk within the medium and high flood risk areas. It should help to identify whether proposed development can be made safe for its lifetime without increasing flood risk to the surrounding areas. It should help inform the exception test where this is required, and it will also highlight where a flood risk assessment will be needed for individual planning applications. So this final slide just summarises the intended users of the strategic flood risk assessment. These are the people that will be using it on a regular basis. So the local planning authorities will use the SFRA to feed into site selection for the local plan. It may also be used by neighbouring local planning authorities. The lead local flood authority will use it, and they are a statutory consultee to the planning process. Developers will reference it when considering sites they would like to develop. They'll use it to support their sequential test on windfall sites, and also use it to consider flood risk to a site. The Environment Agency will use it particularly when responding to planning applications. They will give consideration into the content of both the level 1 and level 2 SFRAs. Other risk management authorities may refer to it. So this includes internal drainage boards, highways authorities, water companies, neighbourhood planning bodies. So neighbourhood plans are produced at the parish council level, and they will take into account the SFRA when they are undertaking their local neighbourhood plans and considering development within their local neighbourhood. Yeah, that's just a high-level list of some of the people and organisations that might refer to the SFRA, but can also include the general public and wider authorities. So yeah, that's the end of a very brief summary of the context and purpose of an SFRA in relation to the local plan. Feel free to ask any questions if you have any.
Thank you, Laura. Okay, very comprehensive questions. Yes, David.
Just a quick question, really. The local water company, United Utilities, have they been consulted with this study, and their investment, medium to long term, is that going to have any effect on positive or negative effect on these assessments?
Yeah, so United Utilities have been consulted, and they joined us at the inception meeting a couple of weeks ago. So they are engaging. We're just trying to work out with them what data and what information we can get out of them that'll be useful towards this. So we're due to have a meeting with some of their sewer network modelers to try and see what they've got and how that could help inform the SFRA. So what I would say is that United Utilities and water companies in general are starting to become a bit more transparent with the information that they have. So yeah, we're hoping we'll develop a good relationship with UU over the project.
Okay, possibly from a low base, they've been getting more engagement.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
you don't have
yeah.
to comment on that. I'm happy to comment for you. That's fine. You maintain the relationships with UU. We'll comment for you. Other questions or comments? I think what we're interested in is how this is going to filter through, obviously, into our local plan, and through the different levels. And I think it was interesting about the defended or the defensible breaches and all that kind of stuff, with that level 2 modelling based on the level 1 stuff. So where are we at currently on this with what we're doing now? Where are we up to? Because obviously the sites coming forward, they're going to be assessed. I'm probably looking at Zoe now as much as the guys from JBA.
Well, I'd probably look at JBA. I think in terms of developing that kind of study, the level 1, once that's reported, we will then have a better understanding about which sites are affected. And then also on the side of that, we're also looking at all the other site assessment work is undergoing. Hopefully that will come to a conclusion early in the new year. Obviously, Catherine's going to talk about that later. Once we've looked at that and the supply that's available, we'll have a better understanding about whether we do have to potentially look at sites that fall within flood risk areas or not. In an ideal world, you wouldn't, but obviously that work isn't determined yet because we need to understand what the supply is that's available.
And in some geographies, almost there'll be a lot more land in flood risk areas than others. So some areas are more.
Yeah.
So some areas will have an inbuilt increased amount of
They
flooding.
will.
So it's all proportionate. Everything's relative to where you are.
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
So we've just to jump in, we have received a full list of sites now for assessment. So that'll be kind of the first deliverable of the SFRA, where we will inform the authorities exactly, what the risk is at each site, and what we think should be the next steps, and then we'll discuss that with the SFRA team then, for what we might or may or not have to do for the level 2 SFRA.
Okay, thank you for that. Anybody else got any questions? Anybody online that we can see with a hand up? Apologies, I can't see very well because we've got the screen share. But in that case, you've got to wait quite lightly. We'll see what comes back in due course. But thank you very much for your presentation. It was obviously clear because everybody's not got any loads of questions. But no doubt when we get some actual feedback on the individual sites, that will prompt lots of queries, etc. But thank you for the presentations tonight. You can drop off now. Thank you very much
Sure.
for your joining. Thanks, Laura.
Thanks
Thank
a
you.
lot. Cheers.
Bye.
Good night.
Right, okay. That's the report for that. The next item is securing employment skills through the planning process. And this is another verbal presentation. And we have Jennifer Clough, South Ribble's Investment and Skills Manager, in the room, who you can see. And I think Zoe Senior, who is Preston's Senior Planning Officer, online. So I'm not quite sure how you're going to do this, Jennifer. And it's like a not together, can't see each other, all that, twice as difficult, blindfolded, all the rest of it.
Yeah.
Is it okay if I share my screen?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Go on, Zoe.
Zoe's going to start.
Right. Okay, Zoe, you're starting. So fire away when you're ready. I'll just let you know when we can see your screen, if that's okay.
I'm trying to remember how to share screen now. View. More options.
In my experience, always make sure what you've got on your screen you want to share before you press the button.
Oh, found it. Here we go. Yeah, okay, got it.
In the past. We can see it, Zoe. Success on level 1. We're there. Yeah.
All right, great. Okay. Yeah, just something else flashed up in front of me then. I didn't want my calendar up there. Okay. Right. I've got you back now. Right. Okay. So you can see my screen now with the presentation on. Yeah. Okay. Right.
Right. By the planning process. Yeah.
Okay. Right. Great. Thanks. So if I move on to my first slide, it's not letting me move. Let's try. Oh, there we go. Right. Okay. So policy 15 of the core strategy provides the policy hook for Central Lancashire's SPD planning guidance on employment and skills. The SPD details how the policy will be implemented and sets out the requirements for employment and skills statements to be provided at the planning application stage for major housing, employment and commercial developments. Preston has additional guidance called Building Foundations. So the employment plan sets out the construction stage opportunities over a range of activities that applicants will commit to deliver. So you can see the various range of activities here on the screen. There's quite a wide range, and these sorts of contents are set out in our SPD. So these commitments are then secured in Preston through a planning condition to say that the employment and skills statement that has been submitted at the planning application stage will be implemented in full And then in Preston, we have a monitoring fee that is secured via a Section 106 agreement to pay for Calico's services, who act on behalf of the council in monitoring the construction stage of these developments, to ensure that we get feedback that the targets that are being set in employment plans are being achieved. So here we go. Here's Calico's services. They have different levels of services. They can provide an employment plan on behalf of an applicant for a fee. Alternatively, they can assess for a fee an applicant's employment plan, that then they may have comments on that. It may need further improvement. And then the service 3 is the monitoring service. So all of these services are set out in more detail in our Building Foundations guidance. So what Building Foundations does is to signpost to local partner contacts that can support the venues and the labour pools for filling these opportunities that are set out in the employment plans. And our community engagement team helps to communicate these opportunities through the relevant communications channels. Calico is a social enterprise that monitors the delivery of employment plans on behalf of the council. It can, oh, sorry, I've done that bit. And it helps to navigate developers through the employment and skills system, which contains a wide range of initiatives, through a lot of liaison and signposting informed by their experience and expertise. So working together with the council, we help to optimise social value impact through suggesting targeting opportunities to communities and places where hopefully the largest positive impacts will be received, such as areas of deprivation. And that can include the schools that are visited being relevant to near the development, but also choosing perhaps those schools where that visit might have more impact in encouraging, for instance, educational attainment, interest in construction, that sort of thing. So here we've got employment targets from the beginning of the Calico contract to November this year. So that's about 2 years of data.
Zoe, could you just blow that up a bit because it's very small on the screen? I don't know if you can zoom in without breaking your presentation. Or I'll tell you what, circulate that. You can try that.
I'll circulate it. I'll circulate it after. Okay. So what that's showing is it's showing the standard national indicators that
are very small. So read them out. Standard national indicators. Come on, roughly.
Yeah. So what they are is to do with the number of jobs, work placements, construction, information, advice and guidance events, number of training weeks on site, qualifications obtained by the workforce during the construction stage, such as NVQ or CS cards or health and safety advanced training, things like that. Training plans, where they're setting out their action plan for certain staff as to what qualifications or training they're going to achieve. And case studies, such as where we get the feedback off the developer as to what opportunities have been created, any individual stories, and so on. So what I've done is divided the figures up into 6 planning applications approved so far with targets, 3 planning applications with resolution to approve but hadn't yet been decision issued because they were waiting on a Section 106 agreement to be finalised, and then 5 planning applications that are currently under consideration with no planning decision yet, not yet been to planning committee. Most of these will go to planning committee because they're major developments. And what the figures show, without needing to read them in detail, is that we're securing quite high figures here for each individual outcome that are rising as we get more towards further back down the application route, as in the applications under consideration and those waiting to be approved, just because the bigger the application in terms of, say, the number of residential units or the amount of floor space in a development, the more targets they're expected to achieve, because these national targets we refer to in the SPD, National Skills Academy for Construction targets, they rise in accordance with the value of the development, and the depends on the type of development, whether it's residential, commercial, employment. Each has got a different set of targets to work to. So it just shows we're getting lots of construction activity in Preston, lots of big schemes, which is a positive. And the more bigger the scheme, the more social value you'll be able to get out of it. So we've got a case study in Preston, a DHL site and a DPD group site, both employment units in an allocated employment area. They were quite large, ancillary office space at first floor, and these were the first ones we've seen through the monitoring process through to completion of these developments. Again, you don't need to read the figure in detail, but we can circulate the slides. But we've got the dark green is overachieved the target that they'd set themselves, as in they'd achieved more than they thought, and the target met is probably about half-ish, maybe a little bit more skewed towards achieving more than the target they'd set themselves within the plan, but there wasn't anything where they hadn't met the targets. And so this is really positive news for both of the units, Unit 1 and Unit 2 at Preston East by Henry Boot Barnfield. And when you combine the two together, there was positives in that, for instance, some of the jobs passed from one site to the other so that those jobs were sustained rather than then broken off. And so the students had a positive experience that visited from the Skills Construction Centre in Kirkham. They had a tour of the site. Some of those students may well have come from Preston, for example. They did some groundworks, they did some health and safety experience. They had a positive experience, as did the people hosting them. And then we have a group that monitors the applications monthly to check how they're progressing, and a steering group we report to with our monitoring findings. We've given them 2 reports so far. And we also look to see what better practice there is out there, best practice, how things can be done better, continuous service improvement. So for the local plan policy, we'd say what we need to look towards doing is mentioning the need explicitly for an employment plan in the new community wealth building type policy, rather than leaving that to the SPD, so that we've got a stronger policy hook. Also deciding what's going to happen with Chorley and South Ribble as to whether they're going to follow the approach we've currently got at Preston of securing a monitoring fee through Section 106, or whether they'll monitor in-house. These discussions are yet to be had as to that might affect then the detail of the policy writing. And also we need to continue to investigate the local issues and needs. We've got various data at national, regional, local level. We just need to continue putting that together and looking at disparities between areas and within areas to help targeting those opportunities as best we can. And that's the end of my presentation. I've got some reference links in there for you to do any further reading. Calico also have a shared apprenticeship scheme which helps with this. If developers are finding trouble getting an apprentice for the length of time needed, then they can look to Calico's shared apprenticeship schemes or any other shared apprenticeship schemes out there if they can't get an apprentice for the full 2-3 years. And then we're on to South Ribble's part as to how they're what they're doing good with the delivery.
Okay, I think Jennifer's going to speak to this tonight. Jennifer.
Yes, thank you. I'll let you know, Zoe, when I'd like you to advance the slide, if that's okay.
That's right.
Thank you. So in South Ribble, we follow the same National Skills Academy for Construction guidelines, but the approach that we've taken is to embed it within the work that the economic strategy is going to deliver. So we launched a new economic strategy in March of this year, and within that, it's aimed to create the right conditions for the businesses to thrive and for our residents to progress with good careers. Zoe, can you go back to my first slide now, please? Skip back to references. Sorry, we'll catch up in a second. Can we go forward one slide, please, Zoe? Technology.
Sorry, it's not moving. I'm trying it. Hopefully it will catch up in a minute.
Sorry, give it a sec. I'll keep going in the meantime.
Yeah, keep going, please.
So within the economic strategy, we have 4 priority projects, and 2 of them are relevant to this particular piece of work. One is the skills factory, and one is employment and skills plans. Thank you, Zoe. Can you go to the next one now? It's caught up. Thank you. So South Ribble Skills Factory is a programme of work which aims to create the right conditions for the economy to thrive and for people to access jobs. That includes support for businesses, it includes apprenticeships, it includes support for young people and support for people returning to work, and also career planning support. What that means for the employment and skills plan delivery is that we can facilitate the delivery of social value, including things like local procurement and volunteering. We can support talent acquisition through recruitment events and through promotion, working with the developers. We can help the developers to find the right apprenticeships, working impartially. We support workforce training needs, providing impartial links again to training providers. So regardless of where that provider might be, accessing the right course for the developer to train for the right needs that they have on that site. We have a programme where we promote construction careers to young people in schools. So telling them about the opportunities in the sector and explaining what the breadth of the jobs are and the fact it's not just what they might think of in terms of the traditional trades, it's all of the supporting activities that they have on site. We identify and we link to the wider funded support. So we work a lot with the CITB, the Construction Industries Training Board, again underpinned by National Skills Academy for Construction. And we provide a one-stop information and advice service to work with developers to help them make sure that we can deliver the employment and skills plans that they create. We've also launched a specific service to help people. So the aim is very much to help make sure that the plans are delivered. Working through the planning system to secure the employment and skills statements, our aim is then to help support delivery. And we've launched something that we call our skills and job matching service. So this is a free service where individuals can approach us and can register with us an opportunity that they're looking for. That might be within construction phase, or it might be where there's an employment use that's being constructed with the end user. And similarly, employers, developers can also register with us where they've got the need for people. And our aim is very much to use this to match individuals with those individual opportunities. The employment and skills plans help us to understand when and where those opportunities are coming forward. That gives us that advantage then to help try and guide people towards those opportunities. We also have, across central Lancashire, an employment task force which networks together 24 or more organisations locally which are funded to support people into employment. So helping them to overcome any barriers to make them job ready. And again, at that point, we can then try and help to link them to the opportunities that arise through the employment and skills plans. Please, can we pick the next slide, Zoe? Catch up. Thank you. We also have developed 2 social value toolkits in South Ribble. Again, these are tools to enable us to help people to deliver that wider social value. And the miniature toolkit you see on the left-hand side is aimed at helping businesses and developers, very much at the forefront of this, recognise the types of social value that we are hoping they will deliver for us. So that includes things like the training weeks on site, apprenticeships, upskilling, giving people local opportunities. But it also includes things like ethical purchasing, local procurement, meet the buyer events and so forth. The larger social value toolkit on the right is linked very much to the delivery of the various social value opportunities, and it shows for each one what local organisations can deliver and how that might help deliver to a particular social value, whether it's using the themes, outcomes and measures that are used across social value delivery, the TOMS, or the National Skills Academy for Construction standards. And we use that very much as an engagement tool, but with the support from the investment and skills team to help them to access that support and help developers to deliver against those. If we could have the next slide, please, Zoe. We've just got a few examples of work going on in South Ribble. So the Keep Moat development site on Croston Road so far have given 2 local residents opportunities, one as a trainee and one as an apprentice, both following work experience placements that were offered as part of that development site. And I've pasted apologies, it's somewhat small again, but we will circulate the presentation, not trying to test eyesight. But the chart below shows all of the projected delivery for the Croston Road site, and it shows progress against that. And you can see just about from the coloured bars, that in most of them it's already on track to exceed that. So progressing really well with delivery across the piece, and that's something that we're monitoring, and they're providing quarterly reports to us. May we have the next slide, please, Zoe? The next site I just wanted to highlight was the West Church Home site in Lostock Hall. This also has an employment skills plan, and in this particular case, they approached us because they were very keen to support local procurement. So we facilitated a Meet the Buyer event with West Church Homes and also with CITB. We had 26 supply chain businesses attend that event, and they were able to learn about not only the local procurement opportunities through West Church Homes construction on that site, but also the support that CITB give in things such as the various training grants that they have available, and the support that we can offer them through Skills Factory to help make sure that those plans on that site are delivered. May we have the next one, please, Zoe? Next site to mention is Belfield Close. This is 7 homes that are developing. This site is aiming to complete next year, and we've listed the 7 key performance indicators here, which fall within those that Zoe described earlier. And again, Belfield Close site is on track to overachieve for the majority of those. So, for example, work experience on track to deliver a target of 8, jobs created, actual of 8 against a target of 7. So they're progressing really well. This one I wanted to highlight because they came to us after the initial employment and skills plan was produced, once they'd started construction, and asked to actually change slightly some of the targets, because it was clear from the opportunities on that side that there was a greater need for certain of the targets and a greater opportunity to deliver than certain of the others. So we agreed to an increase in some on balance of a slight reduction in the others, in terms of making sure that what could be delivered fitted the needs of that site. Zoe, can I have the next slide, please? And then I wanted to also highlight the Leyland Town deal as another example. So in this case, Leyland Town deal is a very significant project. It's going to involve multiple construction contracts and have also end users, which will be business as employing people in their own right. So we've assisted with the production of the employment and skills method statement for Leyland Town deal, and we will be following this through the whole process of the delivery of that project. Town deal's entered the construction phase at the moment, and Bradley Demolition Limited won that. So we've been working with Bradley Demolition Limited to deliver the social value outputs which they offered through the employment and skills plan delivery and through their particular contract with us. So just to highlight, we've already had a 19-year-old resident who's been recruited as an apprentice on that site, a Penwortham resident who's being offered a 10-week paid work placement on there, a prison leaver who's been employed as an operative on that site, and we're working with them to deliver a series of CV writing and confidence boosting workshops to help people locally who are facing that as a barrier to actually engaging in job opportunities, to assist them with a series of that programme so that they will then move towards being work ready. And part of that, Bradley Demolition have pledged £1,250 to work with us to do that. We've then secured through our team a local deliverer for that, and working with them to make sure that that's rolled out and that will be successfully delivered. So the approach is very much one to make sure that we are proactive and that we embed the work that's being done to deliver employment and skills plans in the local area so that we can continue that working relationship. We are also, through the investment skills team, currently doing a piece of monitoring work to make sure that those developers who are not coming forward immediately back to us, where sites are starting or are coming forward to be ready to start, will engage with us and will look at how we can help support them to deliver this going forward. So I hope that's been helpful from Zoe and myself.
Thank you, Jennifer. Thank you, Zoe. Excellent. Right, questions for either, I think Councillor Flannery had his hand up very early.
Thank you. I'm exhausted. Well done, Jennifer and Zoe. So this is I find this particularly interesting. 20 years ago, I worked on the redevelopment of the city centre in Liverpool, Liverpool 1, and there was lots of this going on back then, mainly because of the requirements of European funding. And no one quite cracked it. We had experts nationally, Richard McFarlane, etc., working with different organisations. Ultimately, what you can see here today is a sort of distinct two very good approaches, but two distinct ways of doing it. One is someone else is doing it on behalf of, because they're, you know, a social business in East Lancs who specialise in this area, and well done, because we're working together and supporting those businesses. But very much so in South Ribble, we made the decision as part of our economic development plan to do it internally. So that's the difference really in terms of the two distinct ways of doing it. Both of them are adding value. Both of them have got certain methodologies. You'll hear Jennifer say about the national recognised TOMS methodology in South Ribble, which lists a series of KPIs in terms of social value measurement. But it's very, very important that we get this one right, because I've always said it on a lot of my planning days. It's policy or people. We see a lot of policy when we're going through the local plan process. This is ultimately about the benefits of our residents in our three areas and our three distinct areas. And the monitoring and the opportunity is not just about apprentices and trainees, it's about long-term unemployed, it's about ex-offenders, it's about second phase learners, of which there's plenty in the construction industry. So I'm really enthused to see what I've seen here tonight from Zoe and Jennifer and Michelle over there. It's excellent work, but I just think in terms of our policy, we've got like a rich option here in terms of how we do it. But the most important thing is that we sort of get the right thing for our residents to make sure that all these opportunities of the local plan are offered to them. And this is the best way to do it. So just one question for both of you, please, is say they didn't do it. Say they, and I've seen it plenty of times in the tender process, they'll offer you the world when they're going through planning. What's the consequence if they don't do it? We had seen an example there, Jennifer, they overperformed. What actually happens if they don't deliver on their employment and skills plan and commitments and they're not hitting the measures? What's the consequence to that? But other than that, well done, both of you.
Jennifer, do you want to comment first or Zoe? Go on, Jennifer, you're here. Oh, you right. Either Zoe? What's the consequences if they don't deliver their outputs? Either of you?
Sorry, I did.
Go on, Zoe.
So for us at the moment, I don't think it was always necessarily very consistent whether it was in a planning condition or not that the employment skill statement needed to be complied with. But we've now got that happening consistently now. So if there's a condition and they're not complying with that condition because they're not implementing what they've said they would do, then I suppose you'd just be looking at the normal enforcement process. Now, normally with enforcement, one of the first options is comply or say, for example, submit a new planning application. So I suppose their choice would be to either comply and to offer them Calico's services, for example, as to how they can go about meeting those targets on site. And if they're not able to do that, I suppose they would have to come in with a variation of condition application to change those targets, which then that might mean that they then may need to put some sort of justification forward as to why those targets should be changed, and we'd then have to assess that. If they didn't do either of those things, then I suppose it will be the next stage of enforcement procedure, but we've not had to deal with that situation as of yet. So I'll let Jennifer speak now.
Well, Jennifer has the benefit of not being a planning officer, so she's got that, or an enforcement officer, but you're probably right. I think we understand that, so it's like any other planning condition, it's got to be adhered to. And maybe we need to think with the glass half empty view. Everything is going all right at the minute, but what is the actions that we would take, which would be, as you would for any other breach of planning, which is proportionate. But the first request usually when somebody's in breach is to regularise the situation, isn't it? And we have the ability to help them do that, it seems, whichever system we're using. So that's helpful. Thank you, Zoe. Thank you, Jay. Yes.
Sorry, just a comment really. I mean, as you said, this reminds me about 20 years ago when the affordable homes came in really, started offering 10% or whatever, and obviously they were pushed from nationally. Yeah. And then obviously we are where we are now with 30-odd%. And I hope that this initiative does succeed. And is there any initiative or incentives from the central government they can either offer to the developers, or even a stick that they can give us really to force them to make sure there's some developers who are quite keen on taken locally, especially with the local connections. But there are some who come up with the sad tales about, affordability and all that, and, viability reports.
Sorry, are you asking me to?
No,
anybody.
I think
I've heard
Jennifer,
general
but all, but actually, I mean, the way we're doing this in Chorley is we're linking some of this to our UKSBF stuff, which is around apprenticeship schemes and grants. And, if you want to take an apprentice on, here's an easy route to it, because we're offering additional help and it's additionality, because we all know the idea of taking apprentices on is great, but the administration that comes with that and all the rest of it can be an off-putter for smaller businesses. So I think there's a range of things we can do. And yes, there is some central government support. We'd always argue it's not enough, wouldn't we? And we'd always argue it should be more joined up. But go on, Jay.
But I don't think there's a lot of national support, not a lot of government support for this. But pre the apprenticeship levy, for example, construction was the only levied industry for many, many years. And I thought that there was a reliance on, there's a levy, so draw your levy back if you pay your dues effectively. But obviously, I don't want to go into too much detail. The disproportionate amount of, management contract and subcontractors used. The big companies were the ones paying the levy, but the smaller companies were doing the employing, but they couldn't get the grants, and that was where the mismatch was. But I think the apprenticeship levy now is being sort of normalised, hasn't it? But there's not a lot of national support for this, but it's all local, which is good.
Go on, Karen.
Just a point, when we've been talking with Calico about this, who've been working for us and how they're managing it on site and going around the sites, one of the things that we have found is initially when we started putting this through, I'm sure Jennifer probably had the same, there was some pushback from the developers. They didn't understand what it was that we were proposing. They thought it was going to be hard work to implement and costly, and actually now we're working with them, they're realising the benefits, not just to the development, but to themselves as a business, and giving them the skills, shortages filled that they had. So there are lots of positives coming out of it, to the point that we were getting these we would deliberately ask them to put these case studies forward so we can put stuff on our website and advertise, and actually have them helping and providing advice to other developers who might have concern about delivering them. So I think it's not necessarily the concern that will get them going forward or get people pushing back. I think now we've got more information, and collectively between all three of us, we've got that to demonstrate it's deliverable and it's beneficial to them. And I think that's really ultimately, as long as they can see a benefit to themselves, they're quite happy to go along with it.
Okay, I can't see any other hands up. So what we will probably see is this coming back down the line as part of those detailed policies in the future. There's obviously different streams and different ways of doing it, and we do something, we do stuff in Jolly linked to this. So it's not that everybody's doing something. So it's about how we get those hooks into those policies down the line. But very interesting, good work. Keep it going, as Jay said. It is good, and we just need to do more of it. But that's the way of the world, isn't it? So thank you very much for those two presentations. Again, similarly, you can leave if you wish, or you can stop around if you want to see the next item. We've only got one more item until we move into part 2. We'll move on then to item 8, which is a local plan update, which is Zoe Whiteside to do that item, which is pages 9 to 14 on your agendas.
Thank you, Chair. So yeah, this is just a paper which just summarises some of the key pieces of work that the partnership, comprising of the 3 home teams, are working on. Local plan programme, we've been doing a lot of work to try and come up with a robust time frame of all of the various elements that we need to deliver between now and adoption of the new local plan. So we're working with all our key consultants and stakeholders. We heard earlier about the flood risk. They're one of many pieces of work that we've got ongoing or that we need to commission before we submit the plan. So we're currently working on that in terms of a robust programme, and with the backstop that we intend to submit the local plan under the existing regime to the Secretary of State by 30th of June 2025. So working back from that deadline. So that's in terms of the programme, that's kind of the update. It's an ongoing feast, and we'll hopefully report in the new year as to a new programme going forward. The evidence base, the employment land review has been submitted to us. So BE Group were commissioned to undertake a refresh of the employment land study, looking at specific markets, including industry, warehousing, offices, etc. And they also then looked at some of our sites as well, or the sites that we were exploring as potential future employment sites. So a draft report has been released to the three sets of officers for review, which we're currently working through now. The study looked at over 50 sites, so obviously we need to work through those assessments. They don't make a recommendation, so it's not a yes or a no scoring system, it's just comments and a RAG. So that the plan will be that those findings, once we've reviewed them as the home teams, a paper will come to the JAC in the new year with the details of that study and the implications for land supply and site proposals going forward. I won't labour too much on the SFRA. We heard about that earlier. The timeframes are there in paragraph 17. So you'll see their final report May 2024 for the level 1. And as our colleagues said on the presentation, it may well be that we don't need to go into level 2, that we have sufficient supply, that we don't need to look at specific sites that have a residual flood risk, and those elements need to be explored in more detail. We'll know more as that work goes forward. In terms of policy preparation, and paragraph 18 doesn't kind of do justice really to the level of work that's been ongoing in terms of pulling together what we're calling as a directory. So it's a draft structure plan, if you like, of all of the policies that we will need to develop and prepare in the next sort of 4 or 5 months, certainly before sort of spring, summertime next year. That is the plan itself. So we're currently working on that outline. And again, that will come to the JAC in the new year once as the 3 sets of home teams are happy that that's the structure of the document, and that's what we'll be working to. Thereafter, we'll look at allocating policies for preparation across the 3 home teams and working with our consultants too. So that's kind of the bulk of the work really. Design. NPPF requires that the local plan sets out a clear design and vision, expectations around design. It's a huge thing with the National Model Design Code. Going forward, we will need to have a design code as part of the local plan. In terms of the submission version, 2025, what we're looking at is the start of a design code with a commitment that the longer term plan would be to develop a more comprehensive design code as a supplementary plan thereafter. Preston colleagues have kindly agreed to lead on this piece of work, and that's kind of starting to emerge now. So as that does develop, again, we can feed that back to members. Big piece of work, important piece of work that going forward. Open land policies, so a comprehensive piece of evidence you may recall called the Open Land Study was undertaken by land use consultants, and this looked at existing policies over and above NPPF, where in terms of the green belt and constrained land for open land, including areas of the open countryside, protected open land, and development in the countryside, and an area of separation. So the LUC made a series of policy recommendations for our future local plan going forward, which would inform our spatial strategy and our site allocations. And LUC are commissioned to support the preparation of those policies, taking obviously account of input from the 3 councils. So we're now in discussions with LUC as to the development of those policies, because they're quite crucial to the spatial strategy and site allocations going forward. So that again is a big piece of work that we're looking at, that we're taking forward now. The spatial strategy and hierarchy for growth, again, this is linked to all the things that we're talking about here. So open land, the site work that Catherine's going to talk about shortly. We are still continuing to work on that spatial strategy, and that is something that we will be looking to members to work with us early in the new year to kind of finalise that, taking account of what's emerging out of the site selection process and those open land policies that we've mentioned above. Supplementary development plans, or SPDs as we know, and we've heard about them some earlier this evening. We will need to decide going forward if any of those existing SPDs, which cover a range of topics, affordable housing, plain pitch open space assessment, householder design guide, etc., whether we want to take them forward or not. Government thinking and direction of travel is very much that the local plan should, where possible, include all of your local plan policies and be as succinct as possible. And anyone picking up any of those existing SPDs will see that there is a lot of I would call professionally waffle in them, and the policies are quite a small amount. Emma, to my left here in the local plan team, has done a lot of work around reviewing the SPDs, and I think the kind of the main view is that we can absorb a lot of those policies into the local plan, reviewing them, making them more succinct and to the point, really clarifying what we want developers and developments to deliver, and that's what we're doing going forward. So hopefully the local plan will just be kind of a comprehensive set of policies as opposed to a core strategy with lots of other supporting documentation. It's suffice to say that there will still be a need for some policy notes or guidance notes. So for affordable housing, for example, there's a lot of information that sits behind the policy. So there may be occasion where we will still need some advisory notes, but in terms of the SPDs, the actual policy will be in the local plan in the main. Site selection, I won't steal Catherine Sunder, she's going to talk about that shortly. Infrastructure, we've commissioned Aspinall Verde for consulting. It's been subcontracted to develop the IDP, or the Infrastructure Development Plan, which is a crucial part of plan making. It's the infrastructure that's needed to support the delivery of all of that development that we're proposing. They're currently working on a baseline now based on existing infrastructure that is already planned or that was envisaged as part of the existing local plan that hasn't come forward. They are about to do a consultation exercise with our infrastructure providers across Lancashire, just to get a flavour for what it is envisaged that will come forward with the new local plan. And then clearly the work that we're doing with the County Council, in particular around transport and school place planning, will also then feed into that IDP. So it will be an evolving piece of work. It's not just a case of what exists now. It will have other projects, other schemes, other infrastructure that will come along and be incorporated into that. Strategic transport assessment, we've done a lot of work with the county and Jacobs to come up with a methodology for strategic transport assessment and planning in terms of the assessment of the local plan and the development that's proposed. We've now got a proposed methodology. The work is envisaged to start imminently in terms of looking at the sites that we have currently in the mix, as it were, that were potential for going forward with allocations. And there'll be a two-stage kind of methodology to that piece of work. And what I'd propose is similar to what we've heard from JBA tonight, is that maybe at a future Jack, we can invite Jacobs to come along and talk to members in more detail really about that really comprehensive piece of work. They're working with us around our programme, which is fantastic. Initially there was concerns that it wouldn't fit our programme and certainly help us to get to the June 25 deadline. Now hopefully we're in a position that won't be the case and that they can deliver with us. And that's it, Chair. Happy to take questions.
Thank you, Zoe. You're the de-waffler, are you, Emma? Taking the waffle out of everything. Right. It's a big job. Questions on that report? Anybody? No? Fairly exhaustive, so thank you for that, Zoe. And it seems encouraging. Yes, Councillor France, sat behind me so I can't see you. Oh, don't start. Yeah, come on, carry on.
As a humble substitute member, I'd like to
Put your microphone on then.
that would help. I should know that by now, shouldn't I? Just paragraph 24, to say with my health and wellbeing head on, that I'm really very much hoping that the policy on hot food takeaways goes into here. And I've just forwarded you, Zoe and Catherine, something about the creating healthier places in Lancashire event I went to a couple of weeks ago, which I think is very relevant to this. Thank you.
I think as officers we would agree it should be in the local plan. Obviously it's a member decision to have that policy in the local plan, but I think from the previous presentation that we heard earlier this year, I think it was members were committed to that in principle, so yeah.
Yep, agreed. Any other comments or questions? In which case, thank you very much for that, Zoe. We move on to item 9, which is the date of future meetings. The next one is due to be in South Ribble on the 7th of February. And then the one after that, which is the 28th of March, is scheduled to be in Preston. I'd be okay with all that. And then before you know it, will be election time again. On that basis, with the next item of business is to exclude the members of the public and press. So can somebody move that, please?
Move that.
Councillor Flannery, seconded. Councillor Morwood again.